Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Gallegos, and I am here with IGN's Reviews editor, Dan Stapleton.
Why, hello.
And we are doing a Port Authority video component for Defiance, the MMO that just released a week ago. I guess just a week ago. It's still applicable. A week isn't that long for an MMO. We're still new into this world.
It's still a bouncing baby MMO.
It is. So if you're not familiar with Defiance, it's an MMO set on a futuristic Earth that's been slightly terraformed, which is why you have these pig-cow hybrid creatures called POWs. They're very creatively.
It's de-terraformed.
Yeah, well, yeah. But there's also, like, this area looks still relatively similar, but when you get into San Francisco, it gets really bad. Right now I'm in Marin, so it actually takes place in a geographical area many of us here are familiar with. But
I can see my house.
Specifically, the Port Authority videos, you know, we try and check out how does the PC version of a multi-platform game fare. So in this case, Defiance, you know, the short of it is that it's the best version. But Dan's got some more information for you guys.
Yeah, the raw numbers.
The raw numbers.
Yeah, so this thing requires a 2 gigahertz Core 2 Duo or better. That's pretty easy to come by these days. Kind of hard to find a computer that doesn't have that.
Exactly. This thing can scale really well.
Yeah, and that's you know, kind of the blessing and the curse of MMOs, is that the system requirements are going to be really low end.
Right.
2 gigabytes of RAM, a DX9C compatible video card, which goes back a long way. They're recommending, or they're requiring rather, a GeForce 8600.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's like a 7-year-old graphics card.
Yeah.
And or Radeon HD 2900, or Intel HD 4000 graphics on which if you buy a laptop like within the past year, it has that.
Yeah, and that shouldn't surprise anyone too much, considering this game is also out on Xbox and PS3, which are running 7-year-old hardware. So.
And it says they require 15 gigabytes. That's usually wrong, though. We should check and see how big the install folder is.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I mean, the Xbox version requires 10 gigs to install.
Okay, so it's up there.
It is, yeah.
But and with an MMO, you should always leave it room to grow on, because
patches.
Yeah, it's going to patch constantly. You're always going to fill up stuff with new content. But yeah, this will run on pretty much anything.
Yeah.
For DRM, well, it's an MMO, so it requires the dreaded always online connection.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, in this case, it serves a purpose.
I was gonna say, and there has been a couple of service outages, but by and large, it hasn't been too bad so far.
Right, and there is an authenticator optionally that you can use.
Yes,
which is nice. Usually, an MMO doesn't launch with that, but adds it eventually. Yeah, this one actually launched with it.
Tryon, since they have Rift and stuff, they're a little bit familiar with such systems.
Right. So that's the rundown of the technical stuff. I guess next up we want to open up the graphics menu. So if Anthony can avoid getting shot for like 5 seconds.
Yes, sir. So the menus in this game in general are obviously geared towards a console. Like the very first time I opened it, I actually couldn't figure out how to get to the settings for graphics. You have to actually open this main menu here and then hold spacebar to bring up a second radial menu, which is very analog stick oriented.
It's also up at the top there, isn't it? That bar there you can cycle through?
Nope.
No?
Nope. This is just this.
Oh.
This is just in-game stuff. So to get to it, you actually have to go here to settings. And then from settings, you can see some video options, but they are very limited.
Right. It's kind of silly, really. Why do they even have this? So they've got this graphics quality toggle here, not toggle, but menu. There are 3 options plus custom.
But I don't understand what custom is, because you can't get into the nitty gritty.
Right. Usually custom means there's something to customize, but maybe there's going to be a menu eventually, but right now there just is no option for that. Like when you change your graphics quality. Or like so for example, what's one that had it recently? There was one, maybe it was BioShock actually. I think BioShock has that kind of setup where you set it to custom,
and then you can mess with stuff like how high of anti-aliasing you want. And,
right, but this has none of that. So it feels like there's a menu that will be enabled at some point.
Right.
But right now the only things you can change. Can you jump back in there?
Yeah. Sorry. Right now we're in high, by the way. So we've been in high this time.
The only things you can change effectively are the shadows, the bloom effects, which is the light flashiness when you
see light sources. Yeah, it looks all glowy and pretty, and then motion blur.
Yeah, which it's not really super helpful options. And the only reason you turn any of that off is if your system's not handling it. But
Yeah.
But your system can probably handle this game, as we discussed.
Yeah, especially like I'm on a native monitor that's 1920 by 1080, so I'm not necessarily running at a crazy one. I'll take it down to low just to kind of let people see sort of the difference between low and high. And so low, you can see the textures are a lot less, like the resolution's on them lower. I think some of the grass that's around has kind of disappeared. I mean, but even still, it's not like a huge leap. Like the game's not necessarily, oh my god, gorgeous to begin with. But even on low, it's not that big of a gap of a leap. You know,
Right.
I kind of wish that I could mess with things like aliasing a lot more because you can see a little bit of jaggies here and there.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they allowed you to adjust, the texture settings independently in case you have a graphics card with low texture memory or anything like that. But I guess they're all bundled together into one thing,
Right.
which is kind of annoying. But again, not that big a deal in this particular case. It's kind of disappointing that as an MMO, it doesn't allow you to do full screen windowed mode.
Yeah, actually, I ran into that when I was going to go. I wanted to stream it, and I typically like to stream in full screen windowed. And yeah, that's definitely something you cannot do in this, which is a little annoying.
So also a contradiction in terms, full screen windowed. But anyway, that just means it's effectively running in a window, but has it fills up the whole screen, so you don't
Right.
see the border, but it's kind of there.
Right.
So which is really handy if you're doing multiple monitors. Although in a shooter like this, it might be less fun.
Yeah. Oh, those lighting effects. Lens flare.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not an ugly game.
No, it's certainly not. It's just it does look a little. It's not necessarily like the most visually impressive MMO I've seen either.
Right. Yeah, even for an MMO, it's not the most graphical border pushing, envelope pushing.
Exactly, and a lot of the environments are very similar looking, so you kind of do. It does start to feel a little drab after a while. It's just all the same.
Right.
But
Let's check out the audio options.
okay. So audio options, they're okay. I have voice turned off because there is in-game voice chat, which is a nice option to have that. Like for people that don't use Skype and they're playing, if you're in a random dungeon, you can just voice chat with people. I have it off only because certain people were not being very nice in multiplayer. But
Let's get out of here.
but yeah, you can mess with all the various sounds individually. Like whether it's the master volume, the effects volume, music volume. So you can tweak those. So they're, I'd say they're pretty standard.
Yeah,
Really.
although there is no option for surround sound or anything like that,
That is true.
which is kind of a bummer if you have that kind of speaker setup.
Yeah.
There's no presets for if you're using headphones or anything like that. They didn't seem to take a whole lot of pride in the audio,
No.
but yeah, I don't think it sounds bad.
No. Again, I mean the guns are a little tinny sounding maybe, but I would say overall it's pretty standard in that regard. It's like you said, no real bells and whistles, but it's totally functional.
And let's go into the control settings now.
Okay, so they definitely have native controller support because obviously there is a controller version of the game. And they do allow you to have remappable controls, which is nice.
Yes.
Um,
And they seem to have done a fairly good job with that.
yeah, I mean, there's only so many things they do with the controls a lot of times because a controller has a lot less options. But I do think that the experience is much better playing with the keyboard than it is with the controller because there's a lot more options on the keyboard than there is in the controller. Like just this alone is a lot more inputs.
Also, it's a shooter, so
Yes, that too, Dan.
can you map commands to your thumb buttons on your mouse?
Actually, that's a really good question that I never tried to do. Let me
Pick
see.
a random one. Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, good call.
Does it work? Does it work?
Did we just lag? Did we just crash? There has been a little bit of crashing issues. So we did indeed experience a couple of crashes there when we tried to remap controls. We tried it out on another computer too, and both AMD systems, and experienced crashes on both. So I don't know. That's actually my first time trying to remap the controls.
Well, they're both AMD graphic cards, but
Yes.
But the processes are both
Intel. Yeah. So that's a little annoying.
Yeah, that shouldn't be happening.
No, I agree.
Anyway, if you're able to remap the controls without crashing, you're luckier than we are. But as you can see right now, it's performing fairly well. At least.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
mean,
slowdowns.
I've even been on times like this is an Arcfall, which is like the games at Rift equivalent, and I've experienced times where, right now there's only 4 of us, but I've had like 60 players on an arc flaw at once, and I didn't experience any slowdown or issues like that. I did, however, experience a thing where certain players' skins wouldn't load in, so they'd all be like this default character model, whether they were male or female. They would always just be this shaved head dude. That's fairly common. But again, while I may have lost some of their visuals, I've never experienced like a problem where it was like the game was running poorly. I have experienced random crashes like we just experienced a second ago, though. Most specifically coming out of multiplayer matches. So.
But you've been able to play fairly smoothly though.
Yeah. I mean, except for a few times where they've taken the servers down for maintenance, and it was advertised maintenance, like they would tell you it was coming. Mm-hmm. I've never experienced anything where I felt like the game all of a sudden would just like the frame rate would dip unexpectedly, or I experienced a bunch of artifacting. Nothing like that on the PC version. Mm-hmm. And like I said, again, not the best looking game, but it has some cool lighting effects here and there, and there's sometimes a lot going on with all the enemies and whatnot on screen.
I guess the one of the most challenging things to do in the whole thing, though, is to quit out.
Yeah, I can show that since I'll still get credit just for helping out even a little. So when we first started playing, we couldn't figure out, right? You hit escape, you're here, and you hit... like, where do I go? You cycle through all these, and it's all in-game stuff, and so I didn't really understand what was going on. And
pushing the exit menu button exits you back to the game.
Menu, yeah, but if you see here, ego, hit space, you have to open your ego, which is like your onboard computer, and then from there, if you hold spacebar, you can see at the top, log out, exit game. So...
I think also if you push escape enough times, it will finally get the hint that yes, I want to leave. No? How did I do it before? That was just a fluke.
Yeah, I've had friends that couldn't figure it out at first, and they just alt F4'd. So
that is also, simple but effective.
Yeah. But yeah, it's there you go. Escape and then spacebar. It's a little bit unintuitive. It makes a lot more sense if you're holding a controller. It's definitely made. It's much more intuitive on the Xbox in that regard. But yeah, that's kind of the PC version of Defiance.
Which we should say, and you were saying earlier, is definitely the prettiest version of this game.
By and far. Yeah, I mean, the extra memory they've had or the extra PC power, I'm not sure, probably a combination of both, has definitely resulted in a much prettier game with like particle effects that, again, they're not spectacular, but like parts like this, when I've played it on console so far, I've actually chugged. So I haven't really experienced any of that, which is nice. So, and with a lot of players on screen, I've experienced speed, like frame rate issues and stuff too, which in multiplayer can actually be a pretty significant problem.
And again, those problems are on console, not on the
exactly.
PC.
So on this, I've been fine, so I'm definitely been enjoying it the most on PC, and the review should be going live in the near future, along with a bunch more coverage. So if you didn't read it, read the Port Authority. Look for the review and watch the review in progress video updates we've been doing right here on IGN.